Tracey Mertens had met her husband Joey when she was just 16 years of age. They were very happy together and lived in Birmingham. The couple went on to have 2 children. At the time of this case, Kelly, their daughter, was 11 and their son was 10. The relationship between Joey and Tracey began to fall apart as the years went on together, with constant arguments, usually about money or lack thereof. Tracey's children were her main concern. They were her life. She was a quiet person, mostly keeping to herself. She didn't go out with her friends. She stayed at home with her children. She was a great mother and doted on them. They had recently moved up north to Rochdale in Greater Manchester, as they'd previously lived in Birmingham, and it was coming up to their first Christmas in their new home. Now, it's not known why the family moved so quickly and so far away from everyone they knew, although her husband Joe was described as a habitual substance user who tended to owe people money and could be a liar at times. Tracey was 30 years of age. She worked as a dinner lady at one of the local schools for a bit of extra money. Tracey's son wanted a remote control car for Christmas but didn't think he'd get one. He remembered there'd be no presents under the tree that year. Now that day, the whole family were at home when Tracey said to Joey, her husband, that she needed to travel back to their former home in the Midlands to pick up her benefits book. She had left it behind in Birmingham at their previous address, and it was coming up to Christmas. It was the 22nd of December 1994. The children wanted to be excited, but their father reminded them that they get what they get, just to be pleased that they had a roof over their head. Tracey loved her children. She did not want them to miss out on Christmas, even if there was only something small under the tree, so she decided to go back and pick it up, so she could draw out money for Christmas. Tracey Mertens walked out of their front door after leaving the children with her husband on the 22nd of December 1994, and hoped she could get there and back in good time. Joey was not happy about being left at home with the children, but Tracey reminded him that she would be back as soon as she could. Tracey never returned, and her family never saw her again. As she left, her daughter Kelly had just woken up, and she ran to the window as she heard the door go. She saw her mother, Tracey, getting into the car. She said, "I knocked on the window and I waved to her and she waved back, and that was the last time I saw her." The night before, she said to her daughter, "If anything ever happens to me, you go to Nanny's or Auntie Sharon's." Kelly didn't think anything of it at the time, but later she did wonder whether Tracey knew something was going to happen to her when she left that house. So on the 22nd of December 1994, Tracey travelled back to the area where she lived, staying over at her sister-in-law's along the way, then making her way back to the flat in Kettlesgrove, Birmingham. Tracey made it back to the house, picking up letters, collecting the benefits book and a few belongings, before 2 men ran into the back door, grabbing Tracey and asking her where Joey was. Tracey was then blindfolded and forcibly bundled into the back of a yellow car by these 2 men. The men drove for what felt like an hour to Eton, near Congleton in Cheshire. During the journey, she heard the 2 men talking in some kind of foreign dialect. Once there, she was dragged out of the car, doused with petrol, and set alight outside a church. Later that night, despite the pain that every movement took for Tracey, she was able to get herself help, walk to the road, and summon somebody that was passing by. The man quickly called an ambulance, and she was rushed to the nearest burns unit at the hospital. Police tried to get as much information as they could from Tracey, as they knew she did not have long left to live. It was hard, as despite not wanting her to suffer any more than she already had, they knew that they only had one chance at finding out who was responsible for this. Tracey's injuries were absolutely horrific. She had suffered burns to 95% of her body. Doctors even struggled to find a blood vessel to even administer fluid and painkillers. A shoe of Tracey's was found at the scene. It was so charred that it looked like a piece of coal. She died the following day at 4 p.m, not before police had asked her questions. Despite the extensive injuries and her critical condition, she was able to tell police what had happened in the last few hours of her life. She told of the 2 men that had asked where was Joey before bundling into a yellow Ford Escort. She was driven 60 miles to an isolated church, where she was then doused in petrol and set on fire. Tracey described her attackers as two black men with Birmingham accents. Tracey died the following day on Christmas Eve at 4 p.m. 2 days after their mother had left, they had a knock on the door. It was really late, the daughter said, about 10 p.m, and her father answered the door. Daniel and Kelly, the children, were in the front room. Police took Joey outside and into the police car, where they told him what had happened to Tracey. He came back into the room and said, "Your mum's been in some kind of car accident." Kelly and Daniel were then taken to a relative's house, whilst Joey visited Tracey in hospital. After Tracey died, the pair were sent back to their dad's house, and Kelly says she had to grow up in an instant. At 11 years of age, she was now an adult. She said there were no presents under the tree that year, and their childhood ended in that moment. Kelly didn't know what to do to fill a mum role. Her dad asked her to make a cup of tea. She put 5 sugars in it. She said, "I scrubbed mine and Daniel's uniforms with a toothbrush because we didn't have a washing machine. I had no one to talk to about periods." And after 2 years of living with Joey, Daniel and Kelly ran away to live with relatives. The children were passed around from pillar to post because Kelly couldn't handle the way they were being brought up. And at 15, I ended up pregnant, she said. Her father Joey died on June the 6th, 2020, after doctors found a blood clot in his heart. Forensics were able to pull DNA from Tracey of the man responsible, and they eventually want to find out who this suspect was. But up until now, they have not, due to the fact that he probably doesn't have any previous convictions and his DNA has not been taken. The Christmas used to be a happy time for Kelly and her brother. Tracey would always try and make it special for the children. Despite not having much, the children's happiest times were with their mother, and they missed her dearly. Her daughter remembered Christmas. She said, "I remembered Christmas morning. My mum would always go downstairs first and make me and Daniel stand at the top of the stairs and said, 'I've got to go check and make sure he's been. Wait there patiently.' But things have changed now. Every Christmas it breaks me again and again, and I don't know how to stop it," she said. Kelly now apparently lives in Lancashire with her family. "I don't know how to stop feeling like this. I just wish it was a dream," she said. "I just wish I could wake up after 30 years and I could tell her not to go." The children are now grown-ups. They have their own families. But they look back on that day as the worst day of their lives, and every Christmas is not a fun time for them anymore. Mr. Mark Edwardson, a former BBC journalist, reported on the case at the time, and 30 years on, it is one of those cases that you cannot forget. "There are times when the job really questions your strength of character," he said, and this case of Tracey Martins was one of those moments. Mark followed the story over the years and interviewed Tracey's sister, Sharon Howarth, 20 years after the murder. "I just remember that day sitting in the lounge with her," he said. "She was in tears at times and sobbing. She found it difficult to speak because she was so emotional." He said he found it astonishing that anyone with information would not go to police. If anyone had seen or knew what had happened, they'd just kept their mouths shut. "I think it's disgraceful." Police have received hundreds of pieces of information on the case over the years, including DNA evidence, but none have led to a conviction. Detective Inspector Nigel Reid of Cheshire Police said, "The 30th anniversary was a time that is understandably still very difficult for the family. Tracey met a violent and horrific death at the hands of 2 killers. He added she was so brave, she managed to tell detectives as much as she could before she died. Although extensive inquiries have been completed, including arrests, forensic reviews and CPS advice, to this date, no one has been convicted in relation to the death of Tracey Martins, and the file remains open. Her daughter Kelly is left with nothing but memories. I'd rather not talk about it at all," she said, "but if I don't, who else is going to? I don't want to die without knowing what happened to my mum and who was responsible for this horrific crime." Do you know what happened to Tracey Martins? Was Joey, her husband, the one that they were actually after? And did they take Tracey to teach Joey a lesson? What happened to Tracey Martins? And why have her children had to spend 31 years without her? Do you know what happened? Were you harbouring the criminal? Let me know in the comment section what you think happened below.